Welcome back on this fine day to the land of Lady Splitchin. This week, we're back at it again with the campaign book stuff. If you're new here, I'm an excessive note taker to the point where I need to write a whole D&D supplement book to feel like I have enough information to form a fully fledged campaign. And because Just Words is boring, I'm making my own illustrations for the book too. Now, I know it's a short video this week, just like last week. This is convenient for me because that means I have to record and edit less footage, but it's also a result of me having whatever the opposite of art blog is. I sat down for this drawing and it practically drew itself, so let's get into the speed draw. This is Magda Makai, a gnome wizard. I am absolutely in love with her character. She is one of the 8 leaders in Basilia, alongside Solanum Dolramund and Abiana Araya, who were characters mentioned in a previous speeddraw video. Although Magda is a wizard, she cannot deny her gnomish intuition for invention and research. This is why she's also one of the continent's experts in spell research and development, with her personal specialty being blade singing. Magda's personality is not exactly what I would call inspired by me, more like she's inspired by some of my interests and values. Magda is stubborn, which is an unfortunate character trait of mine. She loves research, which is something I love very much in pretty much all aspects of my life, and she's short. Not that being short is one of my values or interests, but, you know, I just gotta project myself into my characters a little bit. Starting with the overall costume design and why I chose the pieces that I did, as with all the costumes that I work on, there's always a bit of messing around to see what works and what doesn't. I started off strong with the head covering, which was the only thing I was positive I wanted. Everything else that follows is mostly experiments and me trying different things. Based on her work, her blade singing, and her personal preferences, I wanted to ensure that her clothing covered her from the neck all the way down. I wanted flowy articles of clothing that would look very elegant while she was doing blade singing dances, and I wanted most of it to be warm-toned and brightly colored. Her design and color scheme were actually heavily influenced by my Pinterest feed, especially this particular drawing done by Aramessi, but I also didn't want the clothing to lean to any particular religion or culture, so I took inspiration from a lot of different drawings featuring clothing from a lot of different places. Also, I put this sort of pauldron shoulder neck piece because it just felt right for D&D. Also, the sash across the waist is a very last-minute addition. It just visually felt very empty at the center, and I wanted to clutter it up, as you do. Same goes for the little designs on the shoulder armor and the designs on the sleeves and shirt. There's a lot of big empty space in her design, with huge sheets of fabric being involved in the skirt and the poofy sleeves, but I wasn't planning on adding any more accessories because I wanted her figure to remain relatively light despite all the fabric, so I didn't want to put belts or potion bottles or anything like that, so I solved that problem with patterns. Here are the beginnings of all the bright colors that we get to see in the design. Again, I knew straight away what colors I wanted her skin, hair, and headscarf to be, as well as the shoulder things and gauntlets, but the rest of it I wasn't exactly sure. Warm tones were the only thing I had in mind, so you see me do a thing that I do pretty often, which is lay down big solid blocks of color, usually on a different layer, and adjust the hue and saturation until I feel good about the colors. And I did the same thing with the blouse and the skirt, and I also changed the color of the blouse again because I did really like the teal blue, but I felt like it took attention away from her head and face, which I didn't really want. Finally, after a lot more color adjustment and a little bit of cleaning up, I was finally ready to merge all the layers and begin the painting process. I chose to go with gray-blue undertones and shadows because I was seeing it actually appear over and over in the references that I was looking at, and I just really like the contrast it created. Usually for shading, I will pick a darker and ever so slightly more blue or red tone to create shadows, so it was a bit of a learning and figuring out process, a lot of messing with the colors, but since the sketch came to me super nicely and was very forgiving in terms of time and effort, I was super happy to allocate a little extra time to working out the colors. Before I get too caught up in the descriptions of my drawing process, I want to address the gauntlets. So I momentarily forgot in the character design that her specialty is blade singing, and I was just very much in love with the idea of giving her these chunky hand glove gauntlet things. I forgot to think about how the gauntlets might impede movement. Or maybe she just needs a larger sword hilt for when she's wearing gauntlets, or maybe she's so well studied that the additional weights of the gauntlets don't impede her movement at all. I don't know. So toss up on whether she actually enjoys doing some fisticuffs or if she just has big prosthetic hands, which I'm also totally down for because that seems very cool. A blade singing wizard that has prosthetics. Very fun and very enjoyable character design, 10 out of 10. If you have a good excuse for my big giant gauntlets for my little teeny wizard gnome, feel free to let me know in the comments. No, I will not be taking criticism and I will not be erasing the gauntlets because I really like them. And I think they add a lot of character to the design. Besides, it's a fantasy magic world. It's my continent. I can do what I want. I mean, think about it. The actual canon D&D spell, Vicious Mockery, lets you insult your opponent to death, dealing 1d4 psychic damage. The stat block for an average commoner suggests 4 hit points, which means you could say, your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries, and ye olde John from the medieval grocery store would just keel over. And if that doesn't put it into perspective for you, your insult does the same damage as getting pierced by a dagger or slashed by a whip. That is some serious emotional damage! And if that doesn't make you want to play D&D, I don't know what would. I mean, you can go in the comments and tell me that it's not just an insult and Vicious Mockery is the enchantment of the insult to do damage. But why would you ruin my fun like that? You horrible person. That's just cruel. So back to the art. It's not a huge change from my typical art style, but I did make Magda's face ever so slightly more cartoony than usual. I left the big wide eyes, no bottom lashes, and thick rounded eyebrows. I didn't really add a lot of shading or highlights as far as the smaller details go, just sticking to big chunky shapes. I felt like her design called for a more simple look with clearly defined and sharp shapes, as well as keeping her looking very smooth and matte instead of shiny or with a lot of depth. Funnily enough, even though this is even further from the highly detailed and beautiful eyes that I aspire to do someday, I was super happy with the final look. Much more happy than I usually am when I finish drawing eyes. And I'm not sure why this one just kinda scratched the itch. Honestly, adding highlights to eyes is partly me just trying to make myself feel better about the way that I draw eyes. And since I was super satisfied with Magda's eyes, I completely forgot to add any of the glossy highlights and sparkles that I usually add to a face. In case you're curious, I myself do not typically wear any head coverings, and not for religious reasons in particular, but I've always thought that they were very beautiful and also sort of underrepresented in general art or art that is general like fashion or costume art. And I understand why this could be the case. People don't want to be rude or disrespectful towards the Islamic religion or any number of the other many religions that have religious head coverings. However, and for this I'm speaking as an artist who has done a little research and not someone who has a lot of personal experience with religious veils, but as far as I'm aware, wearing a headscarf in the fashion of an Islamic veil, or at least like a hijab as fashion, and not for religious purposes, is not considered to be disrespectful by followers of Islam. I mean, obviously, so long as you're not going out of your way, intentionally trying to misconstrue or tarnish a particular religion by going out and wearing one. So yeah, I just think more head coverings for fashion, with or without a religious context, because it's so pretty. Don't limit head coverings for characters that have a particular religious context. I've done some drawing like this before. I redrew some Genshin Impact characters wearing hijabs a while back, and it was pretty well received. And I am definitely planning on continuing the series beyond the scope of just Genshin characters, hopefully. Anyways, this is your sign to make more art with headscarves included in your clothing design plans because is beautiful. In the meantime, I'd also like to say thank you so much for watching my videos, subscribing to my channel, and enjoying the drawings. I know I say it every time, but it means so much to me to have this opportunity to share in passions and projects and time and effort. You are all so incredible, you are all so kind, and I appreciate you all so much. Alright, do you see this line on her skirt? Yeah, that's a tragedy. For some reason, throughout the entirety of the drawing, I never go back to fix that. I cannot tell you why this is the case, because usually if something like that happens in one of my drawings, it will bother me to no end while I'm drawing. Unfortunately, this time I completely missed it and never fixed it while recording. I did, however, fix it in post, so in the final render, you will not see this line appear. You are welcome, past Lady Splitchin. Can you believe it's September already? I can feel the Halloween instincts kicking in. Speaking of Halloween instincts, there's a Ren Fair coming up, which I'm still working on my costume for. On one hand, I'm a pretty bad procrastinator, but at the same time, a lot of unanticipated events and responsibilities have popped up recently, so I've definitely been stressed and rushing around to make sure I'm getting everything done. And I just want you to know that being a little more pressed for time has been part of the reasons that my videos are a little shorter than usual, and I apologize. It's not because I'm tired of making content or anything like that. I'm doing my best to balance all the things in life right now, and I'm just a little overwhelmed that life isn't going as planned. But the best thing I can do right now is keep going one step at a time and trying again. And here's the final result of Magda Makai, a beautiful drawing. I would go so far as to say that it was probably one of my most enjoyable, most comforting drawings to work on. She just makes me so happy with the patterns and the gold and the blue shading and the bright colors. She's just mwah. And before I close up here, I do want to say if I have unintentionally spoken something incorrect on behalf of your religion regarding head coverings, I'll be more than happy to correct that. I am not trying to start a war here. I just think headscarves and veils are beautiful and should appear more in all kinds of character designs, religious or not, and more people should draw them. I mean, not that horses and head coverings are the same thing, but I drew a horse lady. Am I a horse? Have I even ridden or touched a horse in like 8 years? Probably not. Did that stop me from making a horse lady? No. Not that that's comparable in any way, but you know, there's a connection there somewhere. I don't know. Anyways, that's all I have to say for this video. Thank you again for watching and bearing with me and my shenanigans. I will see you next Friday, and well, I guess as long as I'm not super canceled by then, which I don't think I should be or have any good reason to be, but I guess, who knows? Not me.